a simple message. I'm a lawyer. Don't hold that against me. I've just got to actually point out something. I actually did my Master of Laws degree here at University College London, and I used to work out in the gym down here. This is 20 years ago, so it's pretty amazing to actually be back here with a conference like this, because where I started intellectual property and all this sort of stuff is here at the University of London 20 odd years ago. Okay, so people have said, should you concentrate on doing all that boring kind of stuff? I've really worked at the policy layer and the legal layer. So how we can actually not only start developing a policy, but how we can address the legal issues that otherwise get in the way of what people want to do. So that's what I have spent a lot of time. I have written many, many thousands of words on this, and I've got to summarise it for you in 5 minutes. For those who want to read all the boring stuff, it's all there. It's available on the web. It is actually in PDF form, but it's all under Creative Commons license, so plenty of people access it and have a look at it. So the message that I have got is, if you want to create openness, you've got to construct it, and you actually need to get a policy framework established. Now, this little koala essentially became like the mascot for our project, and it gave us the impetus to continue moving forward with this. We had terrible bushfires in Victoria, an Australian state, in February last year, and this some image that was taken on a mobile camera, a mobile phone rather, went for a couple of minutes. This little koala was one of the wildlife that was injured there. It drank about 3 bottles of water. So you can actually get on the web, get on YouTube, and you'll see, I think it's like a 3-minute clip of this koala, and it's the cutest thing. Unfortunately, the koala did end up dying. It was actually injured. It didn't die directly of its injuries, but what this actually brought home to us, because there had actually been issues about trying to improve access to government information it became particularly acute at the time of these bushfires. What we tend to find in Australia, where we're actually a country of extreme environmental extremes, is that the question of the need, the significance, the urgency of getting access to a lot of environmental, spatial information about location of roads and so forth, becomes particularly acute whenever we have some kind of natural emergency or disaster, whether it's a tropical cyclone which just devastates an area, and no one has really got access to the other data sets that are held by other parties. This exactly happened in this stage, in this situation where Google actually had a map. It could have actually put up real-time information about where the fire sites were, and it had amazingly difficulties getting access to that data on the spot from the government department that held it. So for us, this became an iconic image, and really reminded us what we were in this for. Not only was there amazing loss of wildlife, but also considerable human loss of life as well. So, however, we knew that we were getting somewhere with our agenda when, in fact, we saw our federal government budget papers this year published under Creative Commons license. So essentially what we actually did is we used the licensing to actually open up and to drive the policy development. We still don't actually have, unlike the situation in the United States, we still do not have a properly articulated policy framework for access to public sector information. What we actually did is we used the licensing so that governments were actually able to move to the point of saying, okay, if you can get access to the material that we put out, if we make it available for access, it's going to be licensed under the least restrictive license so that you can not only use it, but you can reuse it, subject to attribution if that is actually necessary and if it's reasonable to do so. Our Office of the Information Commissioner, established earlier this month, actually has put its entire website and the documents that it's starting to publish under Creative Commons licenses. This didn't happen overnight. It took a lot of effort over many years. I've been in this picture since 2004. We really crunched it between about 2004 and 2007, and since then what we've actually seen is increasing, testing out and uptake and adoption of the methodology that we thought would actually work. So in our country, we have copyright applying to a whole range of government material. Okay, what was actually happening? So it applies to a vast amount of material. There is no carve out, and people originally were saying, look, the easiest way to go is just to take copyright off everything, and that will solve all of our problems. We didn't think that was going to be the case, because we thought that without an open access policy, you are still going to have problems. And I think that is actually the issue. So the issue is not whether you've got government copyright or not. If you've got government copyright, I think what we've shown is you can actually use copyright in a positive way, using the way of thinking about licensing that's really come from the open source software and the open content licensing movements, really. Copyright and data compilations. If you actually don't have in place some kind of policy and licensing, what you actually find is that copyright and other rights can actually be used to restrict the flow of information. What we're all about here is actually opening up those information pathways, and if you actually don't have anything in place, or if you ignore this, inevitably, invariably, you'll actually find that the absence of policy, the absence of licensing, means that people don't know what they can or cannot do, and it tends to actually clog up the whole system. Just one more point I want to actually make here. What we're actually trying to do is to actually create a commons of public sector information. It's really important, I think, to actually understand that public domain does not necessarily mean to just have to be an entirely no rights zone. We've actually got plenty of examples where we can in fact have material in which there are rights, but provided we have a policy and licensing mechanisms to ensure that those rights are exercised, so that the material is made available, so that the information is made available. It's not necessary to try to operate in a no-rights zone. We've had pretty significant uptake of these ideas in Australia through the government. Just wanting to actually take you through and show you these examples. Numerous reports have actually looked at this now. They've looked at the issues in depth. They've said we need to develop an information management framework and to license proactively using the CC licenses. The reports themselves are coming out under CC licenses. The first big mover in this direction in Australia was our Australian Bureau of Statistics, which has actually shifted not only to freeing up its data and then taking off costs, taking off charges, and then moving to actually adopt the Creative Commons licenses. It's been doing this for more than 2 years now, quite successfully. They have got plenty of information on the enormous upswing that they had in the use of their material since they actually moved to this strategy. So they're probably the best example in Australia. We've got many other government departments at the federal level as well. Geoscience Australia, everything available for download on their site, including direct data downloads, is actually available under Creative Commons license unless they say otherwise. We've got other individual projects, a huge water information project managed by the Bureau of Meteorology, which has at least 250 information suppliers, all providing their information under Creative Commons licenses. So we haven't got enough time to get into the issues of what copyright applies to and stuff, but just assume copyright applies to a whole lot of stuff, and we're just licensing it out under the CC. This is actually affecting also what's happening at the university level. So probably our preeminent university, Australian National University, from the middle of this year reworked its intellectual property policy that applies to publications by its staff, and essentially default is really under Creative Commons licenses for text or under soft open source. Polar Information Commons, there's a whole lot of stuff happening, so there we go. And there's many, many pages and thousands of words for you to read up in more detail. Thank you very much.